In today's video, we will be diving inside the most secure prison in America. Behind these walls, in a world cut off from the rest of society, lies the most secure prison in America. A place where freedom is just a distant memory, where every day is a battle for survival, and where no one ever really gets out, unless they're carried out. Welcome to ADX Florence, a maximum security facility that houses some of the most dangerous criminals in the world. It's a prison designed not just to hold inmates, but to break their will, to isolate them so thoroughly that the mere thought of escape seems like a cruel joke. Inmates here are kept in solitary confinement for up to 23 hours a day, with no human contact, no sunlight, and almost no hope of ever seeing the outside world again. But even in the most secure prisons, there are whispers. Whispers of escape, of defiance, and of those few who refuse to be completely broken. This is the story of the world's most infamous criminals, housed here, in the belly of the beast. But there's more to this story than just bars and concrete. It's about the minds of the men who try to escape, and those who simply refuse to accept their fate. Behind every wall, every guard, every checkpoint, there's a secret waiting to be uncovered. But what happens when the walls close in and there's no way out, except in a body bag? Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started. Inside the prison. It may look like any other prison, but what makes ADX Florence different is not just the physical barriers. It's the psychological warfare waged against the prisoners within. A place where inmates live in total isolation, cut off from the world. A place where even the guards are prisoners of sorts, locked in an unyielding cycle of control and surveillance. Each cell is designed to break the spirit. The only window is tiny, just a small slit high on the wall, barely large enough to let in a sliver of light. The silence is deafening. For some, the lack of human interaction drives them mad. For others, it fuels a burning desire for escape, no matter how impossible that may seem. The inmates here are notorious, terrorists, mob bosses, serial killers, and those who've proven too dangerous for any other facility. Some have committed crimes so heinous, the mere thought of them sends shivers down the spine. Yet, here they sit, in total isolation, enduring the mental and physical toll of their confinement. The psychological toll. The level of isolation at ADX Florence is unparalleled. You can't even begin to understand the psychological damage done by 23 hours of solitary confinement every single day. These men, deprived of human contact for months or even years, start to lose their sense of reality. They become ghosts of themselves, their identities fading. And that is precisely what the prison system is designed to do. For the guards, it's no easier. Trained to maintain the highest levels of security, they live under constant pressure. Every day, they walk the fine line between control and chaos. Any mistake could result in disaster. Every movement is watched. Every action is recorded. There is no place to hide, no room to breathe. But despite the prison's level of control, the human spirit always finds a way to fight back. Of escape. It is a fact of history that, even in the most secure prisons, escape remains a powerful fantasy. But what does it take to escape from ADX Florence? For some, it's the only dream left to cling to. And for a few, that dream becomes a reality, even in the most impossible circumstances. Interview with a former inmate who served time at ADX Florence. You don't understand how your mind starts working in there. You're isolated, yes, but your brain doesn't stop. You start planning. You start thinking. And before long, you're imagining ways to get out. Some people try to escape with nothing more than a piece of string, a toothbrush, or a sharpened nail. But the most successful escape stories are not just about the tools you have, but the will to survive. In the history of ADX Florence, there have been numerous escape attempts. Some were executed with military precision, while others were downright absurd. But no matter how cunning the plan, the prison's design has thwarted them all. At least, until now. The untold stories. But not every story of escape is recorded in the history books. Some are lost to time. Some are hidden in the walls of the prison, never to be heard. These untold stories are the ones that keep the legends of ADX Florence alive. Interview with a former guard who reveals shocking details. There were moments when we would find something strange. A rope made from bed sheets, a hole in the wall, a strange blueprint sketched on the back of a prison-issued book. We never knew who was behind it, but there were always rumors. Some said inmates were planning an escape. Others said it was just part of their mental games. But whatever it was always there. The impossibility of escape. The most secure prison in America has been designed with one thing in mind: to keep everyone inside. The layers of security are not just physical. They are psychological, emotional, and mental. ADX. Florence is a place where time stands still, and escape is not just a matter of will, but of pure impossibility. But every once in a while, someone comes along who refuses to accept this reality. Someone who thinks they can outsmart the system. Someone who believes that no wall, no matter how thick, can hold them forever. The mastermind of the escape. Meet Thomas "Tommy" Hillman. A name not known to many outside the prison world. But within these walls, he's a legend. Hillman was one of the most notorious criminals to ever walk the earth. A master manipulator, a brilliant mind, and a man who thought his time at ADX Florence would be just another chapter in his twisted life story. But what the authorities didn't count on was the one thing they could never break: his will. Hillman was convicted of a series of high-profile robberies, but his real crime was his ability to plan, to strategize. His escape attempts were legendary. He wasn't just trying to break out, he was playing the long game. The prison's layout is a labyrinth of barriers, steel doors, and high-tech surveillance. But Hillman didn't see barriers. He saw a challenge. It took him years, but he studied every inch of the prison, every guard's routine, every shift change, every blind spot. His first attempt was subtle, a test of the system. He didn't go for the obvious route. He went for the one no one would expect. The first attempt. Hillman's first escape attempt was perhaps his most daring. It didn't involve force. It involved patience. Hillman knew the guards would never suspect him. He was calm, methodical, and he knew the walls better than anyone. Over months, he created a false wall inside his cell. An illusion made from sheets, metal scraps, and tools he scavenged over time. Using his knowledge of the prison's old maintenance tunnels, Hillman carved out a small hole, just big enough for him to crawl through. He didn't rush. He knew every mistake could cost him his life. But just as he was ready to execute his plan, something happened. The guards were on high alert after rumors began to circulate about possible escape attempts. Hillman's plans had almost come to fruition when one of the guards noticed a small irregularity in the corner of his cell. The hole was exposed, but not wide enough for Hillman to escape without being seen. Hillman wasn't caught that day, but the attempt had put the entire prison on edge. They knew something was up. His quiet nature, his careful planning, had always made him a dangerous person to underestimate. The frustration of being trapped. After his failed attempt, Hillman was transferred to a different cell, but it didn't break him. If anything, it only fueled his obsession with escape. The frustrations of confinement, the unyielding walls, the cameras, the constant surveillance, only sharpened his mind. He studied the patterns, observed the cracks in the system, and waited. Interview with psychologist. Prison has a way of either breaking you or making you stronger. For some, it's a test of endurance, but for Hillman, it became a puzzle with the ultimate prize, freedom. But he wasn't like the other inmates. Most would accept their fate. Hillman's mind was always 2 steps ahead. The second attempt. Months passed, and Hillman's obsession only grew. This time, he wasn't going to rely on subtlety. He would do something daring. Something the guards wouldn't see coming. This time, Hillman discovered something no one else had, an old, forgotten maintenance tunnel. It had been sealed off for years, but with his knowledge of the prison's blueprints, Hillman knew exactly where to look. Late one night, when the guards were most distracted, he slipped through the walls of his cell and into the shadows. For a brief moment, it seemed like he might actually succeed. Hillman was inside the walls, movie sus. Running through tunnels no one even remembered. The silence around him was deafening. He had made it this far, but there was one thing he didn't anticipate: the unseen enemy. Prison officials had started to suspect Hillman was planning something big. After his first failed attempt, the cameras were adjusted, the guards were more vigilant, and the tunnels were rechecked. But Hillman was still one step ahead. What Hillman didn't know was that the entire prison had been placed on high alert. Every movement, every breath was being monitored. Hillman wasn't just facing the physical barriers of ADX Florence. He was fighting against the entire system designed to keep him in. The moment of truth. The moment Hillman thought he was free, the alarms went off. The prison had detected his movement, but Hillman wasn't done. He'd planned for this moment. His second escape attempt was not meant to be his last. It was a distraction. Hillman wasn't trying to escape. He was testing them. Testing their response times, their blind spots, their weaknesses. His mind was always calculating, always thinking several moves ahead. The game wasn't over. The aftermath of the second attempt. The alarms echoed throughout the prison, sending a ripple of panic through the ranks of guards and inmates alike. Hillman's second attempt, though unsuccessful, had thrown the prison into chaos. The officials scrambled to contain the situation, but one thing was clear: Hillman wasn't just an ordinary inmate. He was playing a game they couldn't quite figure out. When Hillman was caught, they expected him to break. They expected him to be angry, to lash out. But Hillman wasn't like the others. He remained calm, almost indifferent, as if he had already anticipated his failure. Interview with a former prison official. Hillman was always different. It wasn't just his intelligence. It was his ability to adapt. Most prisoners would crack under the pressure, but Hillman, he never did. He always seemed to be in control, even when the walls were seeking. Losing in on him. What they didn't know was that Hillman had already begun planning his next move. A move so bold, so audacious, it would put everything the prison had in place to the ultimate test. Hillman's master plan. After his second failed attempt, Hillman was placed in solitary confinement once again. But it wasn't punishment for him. It was a chance to reset, to plan, to think. This time, Hillman wasn't going to play by the rules. He'd learned everything there was to know about ADX Florence. He knew about the security systems, the guards' routines, the blind spots. He had studied every inch of this prison, and now he had a plan. This time, he wasn't going for the tunnels or the usual paths. This time, he was going to create his own route. Using a mix of patience, deception, and precision, Hillman began to work on a strategy so elaborate, it would have seemed impossible to anyone else. The first step was simple. He had to appear compliant. He had to lull the guards into thinking that he had given up. He had to make them think he was broken. Only then would they let their guard down. For months, Hillman played the game. He was the model inmate, always following the rules, always appearing to be calm and cooperative. But inside his mind, the gears were turning, the escape route becoming clearer by the day. The psychological warfare. Hillman knew the psychological toll that solitary confinement could take on a person. But he wasn't just surviving it. He was using it to his advantage. His quiet demeanor, his low profile were his weapons. The guards thought he had given up. They thought he was no longer a threat. Intense conversation between two guards. Guard number 1, whispering. He's been quiet for months. You think he's really given up? No more stunts? No more escape plans? Guard number 2, whispering. I don't know, but he's dangerous. Don. Did he underestimate him? But no one truly knew Hillman. No one understood that behind the calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Hillman wasn't just waiting for the right moment, he was shaping it. Every conversation, every guard's misstep, every shift change was part of his plan. A new ally. Every escape needs a partner. Hillman found his in the most unlikely place, the prison library. An inmate named Ray Peterson, a former engineer, had been at ADX Florence for years. He knew how things worked, but most importantly, he had access to tools and knowledge that Hillman needed. Peterson was an unlikely accomplice. He wasn't a violent man, but his skills were invaluable. He helped Hillman forge the tools he needed for the final phase of his escape. It was Peterson's technical knowledge that would allow Hillman to manipulate the prison's security systems. Their partnership was built on necessity. Hillman needed the tools, Peterson needed a way out. Together, they would push the boundaries of what was possible, the final phase. The final phase of Hillman's plan was set into motion. He had everything he needed: the tools, the knowledge, and most importantly, the element of surprise. The guards were complacent. They had forgotten about him, and that was exactly what Hillman wanted. In the dead of night, Hillman made his move. His plan was risky, his chances slim, but for the first time in years he had the opportunity to escape. The prison's tight security, the cameras, the guards, they were all in place to stop him. But Hillman had spent years studying, planning, and now it was his time to act. The tension builds. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. Hillman was now on the brink of the impossible. But even as he reached for the final door, something shifted. A twist in the plot that no one could have predicted. The moment of truth. Hillman stood before the final barrier, a massive steel door, his key to freedom. For years he had planned, studied, and outwitted every step of the system. And now, this was his moment. Everything had led to this single point. But as his fingers touched the cold steel, a realization hit him. Something was wrong. The door wouldn't budge. His pulse raced as panic crept into his mind. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The plan was foolproof. The tools, the preparation, the timing, it had all been perfect. Hillman wasn't done yet. He had to think fast. His mind worked in overdrive, analyzing every possible outcome, every mistake he could have made. Then it hit him. The door wasn't locked. It was jammed. The mechanism had malfunctioned. In a prison built to keep everything secure, even the smallest flaw could be a fatal opportunity. Hillman had anticipated this. He'd prepared for every contingency. Slowly, painstakingly, he forced the door open. For a moment, Hillman was frozen. The outside world was just beyond his reach, but it wasn't over yet. His escape wasn't complete. The real challenge had just begun. The final chase. Hillman had crossed the threshold. The outside world, once so far out of reach, was now his. But freedom wasn't just a step outside. It was a fight against the most sophisticated security system in the world. ADX Florence wasn't just a prison. It was a fortress. The alarm had been triggered. Hillman's escape had been detected. And with it, the entire prison system sprang into action. The guards were mobilizing, the dogs were being released. Hillman was on the clock. Hillman didn't stop. He ran, his mind focused only on the goal ahead. He had no plan B. This was it. If he stopped now, if he hesitated, he would be caught. But running in the dark, with the sound of guards closing in, with the weight of years of solitary confinement pressing on him, it wasn't easy. The search was on, the dogs were in full pursuit, and the guards were closing in. Hillman's escape had become a race against time, a race that only one could win. The final test. Exhausted, Hillman knew he was nearing the end. Every step brought him closer to freedom, but also closer to being caught. His legs were heavy, his breath shallow, but his determination was unwavering. The final obstacle was the main gate, the one place where no prisoner had ever slipped through. Hillman's heart raced as he neared the towering steel fence, the gates locked tight with layers of security. Hillman knew that the snipers would have the perfect shot. He had seconds to make a decision. He wasn't going to make it through the gates unless he did something drastic. So he did what no one expected. Against all odds, Hillman scaled the fence. The barbed wire caught at his clothes, tearing them, but he didn't stop. His skin bled, but he kept climbing, his body fueled by nothing but sheer willpower. For a brief moment, Hillman felt the rush of freedom. He wasn't just climbing a fence. He was climbing the walls of ADX Florence itself, defying the system that had tried to break him. And when he finally reached the top, he took one last look down at the life he was leaving behind. The Great Escape. Hillman had done the impossible. He was free. But was he truly free? For Hillman, the escape wasn't just a physical act. It was a psychological battle, a game he had played for years, knowing the risks. He knew the consequences if he were caught. But in that moment, as he disappeared into the darkness, there was no turning back. But even in freedom, Hillman wasn't safe. The authorities would stop at nothing to bring him back. His name would become infamous, his escape the stuff of legends. But for Hillman, the game was far from over. And that's where the story of Hillman's escape leaves us. A man who defied the impossible, a legend in the making. But the question remains, will he ever truly be free? If you enjoyed this dive into the world's most secure prison, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next shocking story. Stay tuned for more, and until then, keep questioning everything.